Welcome to the extraordinary journey through Azerbaijan's history, a land where ancient civilizations flourished at the crossroads of Europe and Asia. Our story begins in the mists of prehistory, where the first human footsteps marked the beginning of an incredible tale. The territory of modern Azerbaijan has witnessed human presence for an astounding 1.8 million years. In the Azok cave, archaeologists have uncovered stone tools and remains that place this region among humanity's earliest settlements. These ancient inhabitants chose their location well. The fertile valleys between the Caucasus Mountains and the Caspian Sea provided abundant resources and natural protection. By the Bronze Age, sophisticated cultures had emerged. The Kura-Araxes culture developed advanced metallurgy and pottery techniques. Their distinctive black burnished pottery has been found across the ancient Near East, evidence of extensive trade networks that would define this region for millennia. The 4th century BC marked the rise of the Kingdom of Caucasian Albania, one of the most remarkable yet least known ancient states. This powerful kingdom controlled much of present-day Azerbaijan and parts of Georgia and Armenia. The Albanian capital of Gabala became a major center of learning and culture. What made Caucasian Albania truly unique was its diversity. Ancient historian Strabo recorded that the kingdom was home to 26 different tribes, each speaking its own dialect. Yet they were united under Albanian kings who skillfully balanced independence with the demands of greater powers. The Albanians developed their own alphabet and created a rich literary tradition. The kingdom's strategic position made it a prize for competing empires. The Romans under Pompey reached Albanian territory in 65 BC, marveling at the wealth they found. Later, the Sassanid Persian Empire established control, introducing Zoroastrianism and building fire temples. These sacred flames, fed by natural gas seeping from the earth, burned continuously for centuries, giving Azerbaijan its ancient name, Land of Fire. Christianity arrived in the 4th century through missionaries from Armenia and Georgia. The Albanian church developed unique traditions, and magnificent churches were built throughout the kingdom. The ruins at Kish still stand today as testament to this ancient Christian heritage. By the 7th century, Arab armies approached from the south, carrying Islam's banner. The last Albanian kings faced an impossible choice: resist and face destruction, or submit and preserve their people's lives. They chose submission, marking the end of one of the Caucasus's most fascinating ancient kingdoms and setting the stage for Azerbaijan's transformation into an Islamic civilization. The year 639 AD marked a turning point in Azerbaijan's destiny. Arab armies crossed the Araxes River and entered a land that would become one of Islam's most vibrant cultural centers. Today we explore how this conquest transformed religion, art, science, and literature in ways that still resonate. The Arab conquest was swift, but not without resistance. The fortress city of Bardar, capital of Caucasian Albania, held out for months before submitting. However, the Arabs proved to be enlightened conquerors, adapting existing structures rather than destroying them. Christian churches became mosques, but many communities retained their practices under protected status. Under the Umayyad Caliphate, Azerbaijan was organized as the province of Aran, with Bardar as its capital. The city quickly became one of the Islamic world's most important centers. Medieval geographers described it as rivaling Baghdad and Damascus, with magnificent bazaars, libraries, and palaces. The 10th century geographer Al-Muqaddasi called Bardar the most pleasant city in the world. The Abbasid period, beginning in 750 AD, marked Azerbaijan's true golden age. The caliphs recognized the region's strategic importance, investing heavily in its development. Ganja emerged as a major commercial hub, while Nakhchivan became famous for its craftsmen and scholars. Trade routes connected these cities to Samarkand, Constantinople, and Cairo, bringing unprecedented wealth. This prosperity fostered extraordinary intellectual flowering. Azerbaijan became home to some of Islam's greatest minds. The mathematician and astronomer Nasir al-Din al-Tusi developed the Tusi couple, a mathematical model that would later influence Copernicus's heliocentric theory. His observatory at Maragay attracted scholars from across the known world. Literature flourished magnificently. The great epic Kitab-i Korkut began taking shape, preserving ancient Turkic oral traditions in written form. These 12 heroic tales of the Oghuz Turks became the foundation of Azerbaijani literature, creating a national mythology that continues inspiring culture today. The Shirvanshah dynasty rose during this period, maintaining semi-independence while acknowledging the caliph's authority. From Shamaki, they patronized arts and learning, commissioning beautiful palaces and mosques that showcased distinctive Azerbaijani architectural style, blending Persian, Arab, and local traditions. Religious diversity characterized this era. While Islam became dominant, Zoroastrian fire temples continued burning, and Christian communities maintained their churches. The ancient fire temple at Ateshgah became a pilgrimage site for both Muslims and Zoroastrians, symbolizing remarkable religious tolerance. Economic foundation rested on trade. Azerbaijan's position between the Caspian Sea and mountain passes made it essential for transcontinental commerce. Caravanserais dotted the landscape, their ruins still punctuating the countryside today. By the 11th century, however, Turkic tribes were stirring on the steppes, eyeing Azerbaijan's rich lands. The thunderous hoofbeats of Turkic cavalry echoed across the steppes as we enter the 11th century, marking one of the most dramatic transformations in Azerbaijan's history. Waves of Turkic migration fundamentally altered the region's ethnic composition, language, and culture, creating the foundations of modern Azerbaijani identity. The Great Migration began around 1040 AD, when the Seljuk Turks swept into Azerbaijan like a human tsunami. These weren't mere raiders, but entire peoples, warriors, herders, craftsmen, and families seeking new homes. The Guz Turks, Kipchaks, and other tribes followed, bringing horses, sheep, and most importantly, the Turkish language that would gradually replace Persian and Arabic in daily life. The Seljuk conquest was remarkably swift. Within a decade, they had captured all major cities from Ganja to Tabriz. Unlike previous conquerors, the Seljuks came to stay, establishing the Sultanate of Rum with Azerbaijan as a crucial province. Sultan Alp Arslan made Ganja a major administrative center, building magnificent mosques and palaces, blending Seljuk traditions with local styles. The transformation was profoundly cultural. Turkic tribes brought rich oral traditions of epic poetry, folk songs, and heroic tales. These merged with existing Persian and Arabic literary traditions, creating something entirely new. The epic Dede Korkut was enriched with Turkic elements, becoming a true synthesis of the region's diverse heritage. The 12th century saw the rise of Atabeg states, semi-independent principalities ruling various parts of Azerbaijan. The most powerful was the Eldeguzid dynasty, founded by Shams ad-Din Eldeguz, a Kipchak Turk who became the power behind the Seljuk throne. From Nakhchivan, the Eldeguzids ruled most of Azerbaijan for over a century, patronizing arts and fostering trade. The architectural legacy remains extraordinary. The tomb of Yusuf ibn Qusayr in Nakhchivan showcases mathematical precision and geometric beauty that became hallmarks of Azerbaijani architecture. Its 10-sided design influenced building styles across the region for centuries. However, the 13th century brought unprecedented catastrophe. In 1220, the Mongol war machine smashed into Azerbaijan like a hurricane. Cities that had flourished for centuries were reduced to rubble in days. Ganja, boasting 200,000 inhabitants, was virtually depopulated. Yet from destruction emerged unexpected renewal. The Mongols proved capable administrators, and under the Ilkhanate, Azerbaijan became the center of a vast empire. The Mongol court at Tabriz became one of the world's most cosmopolitan, attracting scholars, artists, and merchants from across Eurasia. The period witnessed great Persian poetry flowering. Nizami Ganjavi's Kamsar became world literature classics. Writing in Persian but incorporating Turkic elements, Nizami created works speaking to all Azerbaijan's peoples. By the 15th century, Azerbaijan had been fundamentally transformed, with the synthesis of Turkic dynamism, Persian sophistication, and Islamic spirituality, creating a unique Azerbaijani identity. In the windswept highlands of Ardabil, 16-year-old Ismail was about to change history's course. The year was 1501, and this descendant of a Sufi master would establish one of the Islamic world's most magnificent empires. The Safavid Empire, with Azerbaijan as its beating heart. Shah Ismail I's rise reads like an epic poem. Born into the Safavid Sufi order, he inherited a network of devoted followers called the Sizilbash, Redheads, named for their distinctive turbans representing the 12 Shia imams. These warrior mystics believed Ismail was divinely chosen, following him with fanatical devotion across Azerbaijan's battlefields. Ismail's first conquest was Tabriz in 1501, marking the Safavid Empire's birth and Azerbaijan's golden age beginning. He made Tabriz his capital, transforming it into one of the world's most magnificent cities. The Blue Mosque, with stunning tilework and soaring minarets, became a symbol of Safavid power and artistic achievement. The Safavids' most revolutionary act was declaring Twelver Shia Islam the state religion. This profound transformation created new identity for Azerbaijan and Iran. Converting from Sunni to Shia required massive effort. Scholars were imported from Lebanon and Iraq, new religious texts commissioned, and ancient Sunni shrines rededicated to Shia saints. This religious transformation had profound cultural consequences. The Safavids promoted the 12 Imams cult, building magnificent shrines and establishing elaborate ceremonies. The Tazi, passion plays depicting Imam Hussein's martyrdom, became central to Azerbaijani religious life, creating unique Islamic theatre continuing today. The Safavid Empire stood as a Shia Islam fortress, caught between powerful Ottoman and Uzbek Sunni forces. This position led to constant warfare, culminating in the devastating Battle of Chaldiran in 1514. Ismail lost eastern Anatolia and temporarily abandoned Tabriz. Yet the Safavid resilience proved remarkable as they swiftly rebuilt and reclaimed their capital. This period marked a golden age for Azerbaijani craftsmanship. The famous Tabriz carpets reached their artistic zenith, with master weavers creating intricate designs that told stories from Persian poetry and Islamic history. These masterpieces became symbols of luxury in European courts, with Peter the Great reportedly paying fortunes for single Tabriz carpets. Silk weaving achieved unprecedented heights, with Azerbaijani silk becoming the world's most prized. The Safavid textile patterns and brilliant colors influenced fashion from London to Beijing, while metalworkers created exquisite vessels decorated with calligraphy and miniature paintings. Under Shah Abbas I, ruling from 1587 to 1629, the empire reached its zenith. Though he moved the capital to Isfahan, he never forgot Azerbaijan's importance, rebuilding Tabriz after devastating Ottoman raids and establishing new bazaars that made the city a crucial international trade link. The empire's decline began in the early 18th century. The 1722 Afghan invasion devastated the Safavid heartland, while Ottoman and Russian armies carved up territories. Though Nadir Shah briefly restored Persian dominance, his assassination in 1747 led to complete collapse of central authority. Azerbaijan fragmented into numerous khanates, each claiming Safavid legitimacy, yet the Safavid legacy endured. Shia Islam remained dominant, Persian culture continued to flourish, and architectural monuments became symbols of Azerbaijani identity, establishing foundations that would survive centuries of foreign rule. The thunder of cannons echoed across the Caspian Sea as Peter the Great's fleet approached Azerbaijan's shores in 1722. The Russian Empire, newly emerged as a European power, looked southward with ambitious eyes. This northern colossus would fundamentally reshape Azerbaijan's destiny, bringing both modernization and subjugation. Peter's Caspian expedition initially succeeded, capturing Baku and its precious oil resources. However, maintaining distant conquests proved costly, and Russia temporarily withdrew. The real transformation began as Safavid power collapsed, leaving Azerbaijan fragmented into numerous khanates: Baku, Shirvan, Shaki, Ganja, Karabagh, and others, each struggling for survival. These khanates, though small, were remarkably diverse and sophisticated. The Shirvan Khanate controlled ancient Silk Road routes and grew wealthy from trade. The Shaki Khanate became famous for silk production and architectural achievements. The Khan's palace, with stunning stained glass windows, remains one of Azerbaijan's most beautiful monuments. The Karabagh Khanate, centered in Shusha, developed into a major cultural center. The city's strategic mountain plateau position made it virtually impregnable, while favorable climate supported flourishing population. Shusha became known as the Conservatory of the Caucasus, producing renowned musicians, poets, and scholars, shaping Azerbaijani culture for generations. However, constant warfare between khanates weakened them all. The Russo-Persian Wars of 1804 to 1813 and 1826 to 1828 sealed their fate. Russian forces proved superior in organization and technology. The Treaty of Gulistan in 1813 ceded northern Azerbaijan to Russia, while the Treaty of Turkmenchay in 1828 confirmed Russian control, establishing the current Azerbaijan-Iran border. Russian rule brought dramatic changes. Khanates were gradually abolished and replaced with Russian administrative districts. The process was often brutal. The last Khan of Ganja's assassination during the 1804 siege became a resistance symbol, yet many local elites adapted, recognizing opportunities for trade and modernization. The 1840s oil discovery transformed Azerbaijan's economy beyond recognition. French and British companies rushed to invest in Baku's fields, while Russian entrepreneurs pioneered new extraction techniques. By the 1870s, Baku produced more oil than Pennsylvania, becoming the world's first oil boom town. The oil industry created unprecedented wealth and social change. The Branobel Company, founded by Nobel brothers, became the world's largest oil producer. Their innovations, including the world's first oil tanker ship, revolutionized the global petroleum industry, making Baku one of the world's most cosmopolitan cities. This transformation created new Azerbaijani millionaires. Haji Zainalabdin Taghiyev, born poor but enriched by oil and trade, became one of the Russian Empire's wealthiest men. He built schools, hospitals, and cultural institutions, including the first European-style girls' school in the Muslim world. The late 19th century witnessed remarkable cultural renaissance. Oil wealth funded magnificent buildings, including Baku Opera House. Azerbaijani literature flourished as writers like Mirza Fatali Akundov pioneered modern drama. However, Russian policies increasingly marginalized Azerbaijani culture and language, creating resentment that would fuel future nationalist movements and set the stage for revolutionary upheaval. The new century dawned with industrial machinery sounds and freedom dreams filling Baku's air. As oil derricks dotted the landscape and revolutionary ideas spread through narrow streets, Azerbaijan stood at the crossroads of modernity and tradition, empire and independence. The next 2 decades would witness the most dramatic events in the region's history. The 1905 Russian Revolution sent shockwaves through the Caucasus, but in Azerbaijan, it took a particularly tragic turn. Revolution unleashed ethnic tensions simmering beneath Baku's multinational society. In February 1905, a minor incident between Armenian and Azerbaijani workers escalated into citywide violence, claiming thousands of lives and destroying much industrial infrastructure. However, tragedy also sparked remarkable intellectual awakening. Azerbaijani intellectuals like Ahmet Agaoglu and Ali Mardan Topçu-Bashov developed new visions of Azerbaijani identity, combining Islamic values with modern democratic principles. They founded newspapers, schools, and cultural organizations promoting education and civic engagement. The period saw Azerbaijani theater and literature flourishing. Mirza Jalil Mamadkuluzadeh's satirical magazine Molla Nasreddin became famous throughout the Muslim world for sharp critique of social backwardness and political oppression. The magazine's cartoons and articles, written in accessible Azerbaijani Turkish, reached ordinary people and helped create shared national identity. World War I brought new challenges and opportunities. The Ottoman Empire's entry created hopes among Azerbaijani intellectuals for liberation from Russian rule. Pan-Turkism, promoted by leaders like Ahmet Ağaoğlu, gained popularity as a way to unite all Turkic peoples against Russian and British imperialism. The February Revolution of 1917 collapsed Tsarist authority, creating a Caucasus power vacuum. The Trans-Caucasian Federation, uniting Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan, was established but plagued by internal disagreements from the start. Georgian Mensheviks, Armenian Dashnaks, and Azerbaijani Musavat Party members had fundamentally different regional visions. The October Revolution deepened the crisis. The Baku Commune, established in 1918, represented the first Bolshevik government in Azerbaijan, though controlling only the capital and immediate surroundings. The commune's leader, Stepan Shahumyan, attempted implementing radical socialist policies while maintaining oil flow to support Soviet war efforts. The Trans-Caucasian Federation's collapse in May 1918 finally opened the door to independence. On May 28, 1918, the Azerbaijani National Council declared the Azerbaijan Democratic Republic, the first democratic secular republic in the Muslim world. The young republic faced enormous challenges: ongoing world war, territorial disputes with Armenia over Nagorno-Karabakh, and economic ruin. Despite difficulties, it achieved remarkable progress. The 1919 parliament included representatives from all ethnic and religious groups. Women received voting rights in 1918, earlier than many Western countries. However, the republic's fate was sealed when Bolshevik forces invaded in April 1920. The Azerbaijan Democratic Republic lasted only 23 months, but its legacy of independence and democratic governance would inspire future generations. This brief period demonstrated Azerbaijan's capacity for self-governance and established precedents for the modern state that would emerge 7 decades later. The red flag was raised over Baku on April 28, 1920, as the Azerbaijan Soviet Socialist Republic was proclaimed. This moment began 7 decades of Soviet rule that would transform Azerbaijan more profoundly than any previous period. Early Soviet policies were pragmatic, designed to win popular support. The new economic policy allowed private enterprise alongside state control, leading to partial oil industry recovery. The government promoted Korenizatsiya, advancing local cadres and languages, initially benefiting Azerbaijani culture and education. However, Stalin's rule reversed these liberal policies. Collectivization beginning in 1929 destroyed traditional rural life and led to widespread famine. Thousands of wealthy peasants, labeled kulaks, were deported to Siberia or executed. Ancient village communities sustaining Azerbaijani culture for centuries were shattered forever. The 1930s brought the Great Terror with devastating effect. Purges began with Communist Party leadership and spread to encompass intellectuals, religious figures, and anyone suspected of bourgeois nationalism. Writers like Mikhail Mushfik and Hussein Javid died in Soviet labor camps. The great poet Ahmed Javad, author of the national anthem Azerbaijan, was executed in 1937. Despite repression, Soviet rule brought significant modernization. Massive 1930s industrialization campaigns transformed Azerbaijan from primarily agricultural to industrial powerhouse. The oil industry was modernized with new drilling techniques. Mass literacy campaigns eliminated illiteracy, and universal education was established. World War II tested Azerbaijan's Soviet loyalty. Over 600,000 Azerbaijanis served in Soviet forces, extraordinary considering the republic's 3.4 million population. More than 300,000 died, including 123 heroes of the Soviet Union. Baku's oil was crucial to the Soviet war effort, with refineries working around the clock to fuel tanks and aircraft. The post-war period brought cultural flowering within political constraints. Heydar Aliyev's leadership from 1969 to 1982 marked a golden age of Azerbaijani culture. Azerbaijan experienced unprecedented economic growth through offshore oil drilling development, including the famous Oil Rocks platform city. The 1960s to 70s cultural renaissance produced works pushing Soviet censorship boundaries. Filmmaker Eldar Kuliyev created movies subtly celebrating Azerbaijani identity. Composer Gara Garayev wrote symphonies incorporating traditional mugham with Western classical forms. The Mugham revival became powerful cultural identity expression. However, serious problems developed beneath surface prosperity. The Nagorno-Karabakh issue began festering as Armenian intellectuals campaigned to transfer the region from Azerbaijan to Armenia. Economic stagnation became apparent by the 1980s, with outdated oil technology and severe Caspian Sea pollution creating health crises. The tragic January 20th, 1990. Black January events saw Soviet forces storm Baku, killing 147 civilians. This brutality turned even moderate Azerbaijanis against Soviet rule. By 1991, the Soviet system had lost all legitimacy. The failed Moscow coup attempt provided the final push toward independence, declared on August 30th, 1991, ending 71 years of Soviet rule. Azerbaijan's blue, red and green flag was raised over parliament on August 30th, 1991, marking independence restoration after 7 Soviet decades. However, celebrations were muted by artillery fire from Nagorno-Karabakh, where brutal war was raging. The next 12 years would test every aspect of Azerbaijan's survival capacity as an independent state. The immediate challenge was the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, which had escalated from political demonstrations into full-scale warfare. The hastily formed Azerbaijani military faced well-organized Armenian forces backed by Russian weapons and advisors. The war's early years were catastrophic, with Armenian forces capturing not only Nagorno-Karabakh, but 7 surrounding districts. The fall of Khojaly on February 26, 1992, became the conflict's most tragic symbol. Armenian forces, supported by Russia's 366th Motor Rifle Regiment, overran this small town, killing 613 civilians, including 106 women and 63 children. The massacre shocked the international community and became seared into Azerbaijani consciousness as a symbol of suffering and injustice. Political instability plagued the republic throughout 1992 to 1993. The Azerbaijan Popular Front, led by Abulfaz Elchibey, won 1992 democratic elections on independence, democracy and pan-Turkism platforms. However, the government struggled with ongoing war, economic collapse, and internal opposition from Soviet-era elites. The crisis peaked in June 1993 when Colonel Surat Huseynov launched military rebellion, forcing Elchibey to flee Baku. Parliament, facing complete state collapse, invited Heydar Aliyev to return from political exile. The former Soviet Politburo member represented stability and experience at this supreme crisis moment. Aliyev's 1993 return marked a fundamental turning point. He defeated Huseynov's rebellion and began rebuilding state institutions. The 1994 ceasefire agreement ended active Nagorno-Karabakh fighting, but left the conflict unresolved. Armenian forces controlled nearly 20% of Azerbaijan's territory, creating over 1 million refugees and internally displaced persons. The ceasefire allowed focus on economic reconstruction. The contract of the century, signed September 20, 1994, became Azerbaijan's economic recovery foundation. This agreement with international oil companies committed $7.4 billion to developing Caspian Sea oil reserves, bringing desperately needed foreign investment while creating international stakeholders in Azerbaijan's independence. However, managing oil wealth while building democratic institutions proved challenging. Massive revenues strengthened the state, but increased corruption and authoritarianism. Opposition parties faced increasing restrictions, independent media was suppressed, and civil society organizations were marginalized. Foreign policy was marked by careful balancing between major powers. Azerbaijan developed close relations with Turkey and the United States, while maintaining working relationships with Russia and Iran. The Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline construction provided independent routes to Western markets, reducing Russian transportation dependence. Military reconstruction proceeded slowly but steadily. Azerbaijan's armed forces, devastated by early 1990s defeats, gradually rebuilt with Turkish and Israeli assistance. However, the military balance still favored Armenia, maintaining defensive positions in occupied territories. By 2003, Azerbaijan had survived its most critical period and established itself as a functioning state. The country had rebuilt its economy around energy exports and maintained independence despite regional pressures. However, fundamental challenges of democratization, economic diversification, and conflict resolution remained unresolved as Heydar Aliyev's era drew to a close. Heydar Aliyev's death on December 12, 2003, marked an era's end and a new chapter's beginning. His son, Ilham Aliyev, inherited both the presidency and enormous challenges facing the young nation. Over the past 2 decades, Azerbaijan has transformed from a struggling post-Soviet state into a regional power, culminating in the dramatic 2020 victory restoring territorial integrity. The 2000s witnessed unprecedented economic growth fueled by soaring oil prices and increased production. The Azeri Chirag Guneshli complex became one of the world's largest oil developments, while Shah Deniz gas field promised to make Azerbaijan a major European energy supplier. GDP per capita increased from $760 in 2003 to over $7,800 by 2014. The Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline, inaugurated in 2006, fulfilled Heydar Aliyev's energy independence vision. This 1,776-kilometer pipeline carried Azerbaijani oil directly to world markets without Russian territory transit, fundamentally altering Caucasus' geopolitical balance. However, the oil boom brought challenges. Massive petrodollar influx strengthened state capacity but increased corruption and authoritarianism. The 2005 parliamentary elections were heavily criticized internationally, setting a pattern of disputed elections characterizing Ilham Aliyev's rule. The 2008 to 2009 global financial crisis tested Azerbaijan's resilience. Oil prices collapsed, forcing manat devaluation and austerity measures. The crisis highlighted dangerous hydrocarbon export dependence and spurred diversification efforts, though with limited success. Azerbaijan's foreign policy featured complementarity, maintaining good relations with all major powers, while avoiding exclusive alliances. The country developed strategic partnerships with Turkey and Israel, while carefully managing Russian and Iranian relationships. Military modernization became a government priority, with defense spending reaching over $1.7 billion annually by 2019. Azerbaijan developed close partnerships with Turkey and Israel, acquiring advanced weapons including drones, precision artillery, and air defense systems. The breakthrough came in September 2020, when fighting erupted along the Nagorno-Karabakh contact line. Azerbaijan launched Operation Iron Fist to restore territorial integrity. The 44-day war showcased revolutionary military performance. Turkish drones, Israeli precision weapons, and advanced electronic warfare gave decisive advantages over Armenian forces equipped with Soviet-era weapons. The Armenian defeat was comprehensive. Azerbaijan recaptured over 300 settlements, including strategic Shusha, before Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan signed the November 9, 2020 ceasefire agreement. Armenia withdrew from all occupied territories except parts of Nagorno-Karabakh, where Russian peacekeepers were deployed. The victory's psychological impact was profound. After nearly 3 decades of defeat and occupation, Azerbaijanis experienced national catharsis. The return of displaced persons to ancestral lands began immediately, though reconstruction challenges were enormous. Post-war Azerbaijan focuses on reconstruction and normalization. The massive Great Return program aims to rebuild liberated territories with modern infrastructure and smart city technologies. Fuzuli Airport, completed in record time, symbolizes Azerbaijan's commitment to rapid development. Today's Azerbaijan, with over 10 million population, has become a middle-income country with modern infrastructure and significant regional influence. The country chairs the non-aligned movement and will host COP29 in 2024. Yet fundamental questions remain about future direction. Transitioning from oil dependence, developing democratic institutions, and maintaining harmony will determine whether Azerbaijan can build on recent successes for future prosperity.